I don't know how I'm going to say the name of this one, but I'm going to try my best. Today we're going to go over the Marshal Historical brand Maciejowski Bible falchion. So first impressions of this when I got it out of the box was there are a few flaws that they had when making it. When they made the handle scale, this is something that I've seen is actually fairly consistent with a few people that have also gotten the same blade. The handle scale is smaller than the tang of the blade itself, and that is not very comfortable in the hand because what happens is the steel has a tendency to bite into your hands. I have filed it down quite a bit, but a little bit of that tang is still poking up, and that actually does kind of eat up your hands a little bit when you're swinging it. Another thing is it actually comes fairly sharp. This is similar to the modern day brush axe. What's nice is you can use it with two hands, and it's actually somewhat flexible for how big it is. And part of that flexibility is what gives it great absorbance for shock impact, making it probably a spring steel. Downside there, though, is the way they attach the handle scale. It also flexes back in the tang, separating the scale. So I can quite easily see in the near future me having to replace the handle scales. The handle scales themselves actually have a couple of tree knots in them from branches when they cut the wood. They didn't really think about how that will affect the scales of the handle, making weak points where I actually have several cracks forming through the handle already after just a simple bit of use here and there. The Maciejowski Bible falchion by Marshal Historical can be found on Dark Knight Armory for $108. It does have a few drawbacks for the way it was built, but if you're just looking for a simple Maciejowski Bible falchion brush axe, look no further. This is a great tool for any kind of reenactment kit if you are wanting to do something outside of battle. There are certain images that do show in paintings of this being used or something similar to this being used in warfare. It's been considered dubious. There's not been many similar examples to this found, and I can see why. It's got a very unique head on it, but I've actually been able to kind of get some ideas as to whether or not these little bits here have a function. Something I had a thought of is if you are trying to break roots when digging, and I'm going to put this to a test in the future and see whether or not that theory comes true, but this little hook here actually could be used if you're trying to get a root out of the way when digging. If that was sharpened up, that little hook could actually be used to set on a root, strike it with a mallet, and just cut right through to get the root out of the way. Most shovels were made of wood at this time, and unlike today's steel shovels, roots would be a big issue to try to dig around. For the handle length versus the weight of the tool, it is actually very nice amount of space here for clearing brush and just cutting limbs. This is actually really great. For its size, it really is able to lend itself to saving you the energy when cutting through so that you're not just fighting every single branch with a small short blade. You actually got a very nice long area to strike with. And because of that longer length, if you strike further out on the end, it has more energy put in to where it's easier to cut. Downside, I did notice when I was doing some cutting, it did warp the edge of the blade a little bit. There's areas where the blade kind of wobbles a little bit now, whereas it didn't before. It didn't chip or break the blade, and I was not going easy on it. I was using it like it was a tool. That could be a problem where the edge of the blade was made too thin for this, and it's just kind of bending it in the shock of things, and the spring is trying to keep it together, hence why it bent but didn't crack or break or chip. Or it could just be the edge itself was made too thin when the blade was made. They did add in a fuller on the blade, and with this, that's not really necessary, especially with how small that is. This blade is about an 1/8 inch thick piece of steel, and it stays an 1/8 inch thick everywhere except for the little area going down here where they put the edge of the blade in. If this were a fighting tool, that would be kind of awkward, but for just a working tool where you're able to take the breaks you need and work at your own pace, your own please, that's actually perfect because it adds that extra weight into the end of the blade, so swinging has more energy coming in behind it. When I was out cutting the brush and tree and such that you see here, I was not at all bothered by its weight. It actually was pretty easy to swing and honestly kind of fun. The impact felt very much like an axe when swinging. It just is a bigger area. The closer I did swing to the handle though, the more uncomfortable it was to hold because of the way that tang is within the wooden handle scale. But that's more of a aesthetic issue and design flaw. For clearing brush or cutting a path through brush, it is also pretty effective because it gives you that extra reach to try to get into where the branches are so that you're not stuck trying to use a small blade area. Instead, you have a large blade area so it can function much like a machete. I would actually compare this more so to a medieval version of a machete, more so than people compare the falchion. The falchion is a dedicated tool for its job, and we can see that it has, throughout history, become more and more dedicated to that, from having a full-on guard to even pommels added onto them for balance. But this style of falchion, this is more following the use of a farmer's tool rather than a actual fighting implement. Hopefully in the future I can get an actual soft target, maybe one of those martial arts dummies to test stuff like this against, so that it has some kind of give behind it as well as movement behind it, so it's not just one solid piece laying somewhere. My initial rating I would give this would probably be a 6 out of 10. And all of that has to do with the handle, the quality of scales, the misfitting of scale to tang, as well as the high chance that the scale is probably going to get broke off. That really brings it down a lot. Some might say and try to get around that by saying, oh, but that's not the main focus of the tool. Your handle needs to be comfortable and in working condition from the day you either make or receive it. You don't cut corners, especially with your handles. The handle is the whole part that you're holding, and if what you're holding is chewing up your hands, breaking the handle itself, or just not functioning the way it's supposed to, it's no good. You cannot just try to make excuses for it. The blade itself though, I would actually give that an 8 out of 10. What brings that down is the warping in the blade edge itself. I don't know if that's going to start chipping out the more I use it, or just start bending out in a weird S-curvy length down the whole length of the blade. We'll see how that affects it when I resharpen it here in the future, if that will clean it up, and if it does clean it up, we'll see if it comes back. So the steel might be just too soft in that way if it comes back, even with the blade being thickened up after being sharpened. We'll see. I also want to sharpen up some of these little notches on it to see if there's any uses I can think for it. These ones I certainly can think of a few uses, because if this is sharpened up, and let's say you're on the ground and just pruning a tree, and there's some branches on the tree trunk itself that you need to prune, you can probably have a single side of this sharpened, and you're just striking upward to prune those branches off. You're just nipping them off. It would also work good for nipping off buds. Similar to here on this back little half moon, you can probably use it for you're just wanting to prune off a little area without damaging too much of the bark. Could help a lot. We'll see. Once I get those sharpened up, I will do a video in the future of just those other ideas testing beyond what I just did for basics today. As it is though, I can recommend this if you're trying to get a tool for a lower price and just decent function for how if you're trying to portray just a medieval laborer, woodsman, or farmer. This is actually a must in that toolkit. It fits all the needs and it does not disappoint. Even with its flaws, I am still quite pleased with this purchase. It's not something I have any regrets on. All the issues are issues that I'm pretty sure I can fix myself, though not all people are in my position where they have that knowledge, skill, or tool set to be able to fix this. So keep that in mind. Let me know some projects you want me to see me try out working with this, and we'll try that in the next video that we do for part 2 of the Maciejowski Bible falchion. Take care.